Welcome to Wire Guild. This tutorial is for a plain strap bangle, and these are the materials that I used. Now they're going to be dependent on what size you want to make your bracelet. So I've got some short pieces of 1mm round wire or 18 gauge, and they will make my clasps, so I can put those on one side. I've got some D-shape or half hard half round wire for binding, 18 gauge, and I've got some square wire. Now I've got both gold fill and I've also got silver. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, which is a pin vise. Usually with pin vices you have two different ends and they have different shaped holders, if you like, in the end. It's called a chuck. Now as you can see, in the end of that it's quite large and round, whereas that is just a straight cross. The end with the straight cross is the end that we want. So I just put the thing back on, and then I can put my piece of wire just into the end and then tighten it up. I don't want it to go in too far because we're going to twist the wire, and however far it goes in, that area won't be twisted. So make sure it's nice and safely in, and we get a pair of pliers out and grip the other end. Now this is going to, let's just get these bits of wire out of the way so that I'm not knocking them over, because I'm going to use virtually every bit of my string to try to get this into shot. Now when we twist, it's easier if you use your pliers like that. If you hang on a minute, let me shift this over so that you can see what I'm doing. If you put the wire in like that, it's hard to get hold of. If you put the wire in across the pliers like that, it's much easier. Now if I turn this whole thing sideways, you can see what I'm doing, and I'm going to start twisting. Now I'm actually counting each time I twist, and I'm going to keep going until I get the kind of twist I want. Some people prefer a very loose twist. Just don't go too tight. If you go too tight, you may get to the point where you've actually, sort of twisted the wire that far that it will break. So I'm just going to take this out. Well, I don't want to release it far enough. Let's take it out of the pin vise. Now one thing it does do is it gets quite dirty when you twist it. So if you get a cloth, I'll just show you what I mean. And I go down the length of the wire. Can you see that? Yeah, the wire was quite clean until I twisted it, so it's always an idea to give it a rub with a cloth after you've twisted. So I'm going to do the other one. So I get the pin vise the right way around, put the end in, tighten it up, that's it. Make sure it's totally tight. If it's not completely tight, what will happen is as you try and twist it, it'll go click, 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 and that's the sound of the square wire moving in the vise. And the same if you don't grip your pliers hard enough, you'll get this clicking noise. So I think I put, I can't remember exactly, 24, 25 twists in there. So I do the same with the other one, and then just double check it by putting them side by side, and you'll be able to see if the twists are the same. Release the little screw and take them out, and I'm just going to wipe both of those off now. Make sure that they're nice and clean. Okay, so I have two twisted wires. Now effectively what you've done is when you've taken your wires and you've twisted them, you've turned square wires into round wires. Therefore don't do them all. If you do them all, making your wires then lay flat is virtually impossible. Now I've got 4 silver wires and I've got 4 gold fill wires, and I'm going to try and show you the difference in how you put these wires together and how different that your bracelet can look. It may be a perfectly plain bangle, but you can make them all look different. So you've got like a silver core to this one, and then you've got gold down the edges. Now if I wriggle these wires around so that we've got them in a different order, so I had all the silver ones down the middle. If I put 2 of the gold ones down the middle, that will give me 2 gold ones in the centre, then the 4 silver ones either side, and then another 2 gold ones down the outside. If I just straighten those up with my fingers, get them together. You notice how I pull the wires together. I sort of stroke my thumb and finger up and down them. But keep moving your wires around. If you're going to use two colours like this, and the reason I use two colours like this is because it's so much easier for sales, because people often say I don't know if they like gold or I don't know if they like silver. This has got both. So keep playing with them. Look at what you're getting, decide what it is that you want and how you want your wires to lay. For those of you that have watched my skill set video on binding, you know that I don't like to use tape, so I'm just measuring the central point. I have 7 inch because I want this bracelet to measure a final 7.5 inches, which is a nice average. So I've measured the central point at 3.5. Okay, make sure my wires are straight at either end. Hold them between my thumb and finger, making sure I've got them all flat. If you need to, you could put your pliers across like that. That really flattens them down, because of course the space between the pliers is such that you can't allow your wires to cross. So I've got my binding wire. This is 18 gauge, half hard, half round binding wire. There's no point in me telling you what it is in mil because it's only available in the States. I put a nice bend in, catch that around my 8 wires and tuck the end. I'm just slightly to the left of the middle spot, and I'm just going to tuck that end in underneath my fingernail on my index finger. Now I'm having trouble wrapping this round because my camera's right in the way of where I want to wrap, and press down. Get it nice and straight and press down. Putting on bindings is a little bit like your handwriting. My bindings tend to slope with sort of, at an angle, rather than being absolutely dead straight. And to tell you the truth, I don't really mind. It's one of those things that I do. I have slightly offset bindings, and if it bothers you, spend more time making sure that your bindings are dead straight. But I've never ever had anybody say, oh excuse me, I don't think your bindings are straight. So as long as they're nice, they're flat, they're tight down, they're doing the job they're meant to do. And I do that by making sure that I press down with the pliers each and every time I go around. With a plain bangle, this central binding is more than just holding the whole thing together. It's a decorative thing. So decide how many bindings you want, how many wraps around you want to have. Let me just, pull that back into shot. All I'm doing is I'm pressing that down onto the back of the piece now. There we are, making sure that my wires are still flat. Right. Once I've decided I've got enough bindings on, I just trim off less than halfway across the width of the piece, and then press that down with my pliers. You see, no masking tape, no sticky tape, and everything's nice and flat. However, if you do want to use masking tape to hold everything together, do so. If your ends are a little uneven, like mine are, we'll just trim those off. Just make sure everything's flat. Like I say, I tend to use my fingers to do this, and if not, pliers over the top. So I can see I've got some higgledy-piggledy edges there. So if you take your snips, go right across the length and squeeze, don't cut through. You can't see it on this unfortunately, but you leave yourself a slight mark in the metal, and then you can follow that mark in the metal one wire at a time, and you'll get a perfectly straight line. So you don't need to mark it with a pen or a pencil, just go straight across with your pliers and you get a nice straight line. Get my bits out of the way. I'm not usually this tidy. Okay, so back on with the pliers, and let's see, make sure I've got everything straight, make sure nothing's twisted. At the end of your wires, you need to leave about 1/4 inch of wire at the end. So I always find this really easy on one end and really hard on the other, so I've taken to just putting a pencil mark across so that I know where I can wrap up to, and I'm going to show you what to do if you space that badly, but not just yet. So I need my binding wire again, Still holding the piece between my thumb and finger to make sure that the wires don't cross or lift, and begin wrapping. End of the wrapping wire goes underneath my index finger. I fight with the camera. There we go. And press it down. There we are. And then I'll wrap around. How many times on the end doesn't really matter. The only thing that does matter is that both ends are the same. So I'm just going to keep going around now until I get up to my my little pencil mark. As I say, I keep hitting the camera here, which is not the most ideal, but I'm sure you get the gist. So wrap around, press down, wrap around, press down, all the way down until we get to that pencil line. Now I've got a little bit there that just needs to, let's have a look. Oh no, it's alright, it's tucked in. Sometimes you'll get the odd piece that is not sitting as tight as the others. All you need to do is sort of almost go back one. Sort of go back, pull the wire, tighten it down, and it will even it up. Just remember, we're not pulling these bindings tight. If you do that, what you'll end up with, instead of a flat strap of wire, you'll end up with a little clump of wires. Just push that down. Make sure they're all still flat. So that was the movement that I talked about. You lift up, you pull it tight, and you pull it back down, and that will get rid of any looseness. Get that out of the way, and then press down with the pliers. Lovely. Now going around to the other side, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I've put my pliers across and I've snipped the ends off, but there's no point in me doing all this slowly. You can watch me do it. 1/4 of an inch, mark it with a pencil. But what I'm doing on this side is just so that you know is I've actually started further in than I did on the other side, because I want you to see how that you can rectify it. So you count the other side and I've got 8 wraps. So I go back to this side, and when I get to 8 wraps, I'm not at the line. So I'll keep going a bit further. That's another 2, and another 1, that's another 3. So I've actually got 11 wraps now on one end and 8 on the other. I could go back to the other end and add 3 wraps to the other end, or I can just do what I'm about to do, which is undo. Let me just double check the number. Yeah, I've got 3 too many. So I'm just going to undo 1, 2, 3. That will go in the scrap pot and get sent back in for wastage. And I just press that end out. Now I've got 2 ends that are in the right spot and both have 8 wraps. And I think, with it being a totally plain one, I'm going to bind in the centre point halfway between these. I usually do this by eye. I don't measure. Now I don't know whether you've noticed, but my binding in the middle is not perfectly central, and I'm going to show you how to rectify that in a minute too. So round we go. These side ones aren't really doing much for strength of the piece, but every time you add something, it adds to it, and it adds to the strength, makes it stronger. They're not really necessary, but they look pretty, and it just gives it that little bit more body. You're making a very, very plain bangle, although I must admit these have sold consistently for me for years. Because a lot of people just want something that they can wear every day. They don't necessarily want any beads or stones or anything like that in it. They just want something attractive, well made and practical, because of course it doesn't catch on anything. So I'm about halfway down the other side now. and I'm going to bind around there, and the only thing I'm going to make sure is that I've got the same amount of bindings as I did on the other side, which was 4. So let's just go around, that's twice, press it down. You notice I press down with the pliers every time. This makes sure that everything stays flat. Lift, pull, that makes sure that first one's just as tight as the others. Back round to the back. Trim off so it's less than halfway, and the same with the other side, and press that down with my pliers all the way down. That's it. Now if it goes a little bit skew-iffy like that, just even it up. So we've got all the cut ends on the back, move those out of the way, and all the nice neat bindings on the front. So I'm going to show you how to make the clasp now. We have 2 pieces of wire, one's 2.5 inches and this one is 2 inches. I'm going to grip the 2-inch piece of wire in my round nose pliers and I'm going to bend it into a U shape. Okay, all the way around so that the ends are nice and even and they touch each other and you don't have one longer than the other. There we go, nice U shape. Then I'm going to grip with the pliers and I'm going to curl around. There we go. All the way around until it touches. Like that. And the same on the other side. Sorry, if you can hear feet running up and down, it's my dog's going mad running up and down the steps for some reason, I don't know why. There we go. And touch on the other. Oh, not quite even. Put the pliers in, ease it out a bit, and that's better. Now they're not touching, so both pliers in and squeeze together. Ta-da! A little eye part of the hook. If it's not flat, pliers over the top, make it flat. So now we need to make the hook. Now I've actually got quite a few stills in here for you to see, stills as well as seeing the film of this, because it's a little more awkward. If I just grip my 2.5 inch piece of wire in the middle with a pair of pliers, it's amazing what the eye does. It throws you off to one side. So the easiest way is to take your 2.5 inch piece of wire and mark it in the centre. So you're marking it at the 1.25 inch point. Now I've just got a pencil here, but if you've got a Sharpie or something like that, you'd probably be better with that because it'll be easier to see. Now when you put the pliers onto this, you put them at the side of the mark. So when we bend it like that, it bends on the mark. Let me just show you a close up there. Can you just see the mark at the tip? Lovely. Now we take our pliers and we go over the top and gently squeeze down. Can you see it tends to slip off, but don't let it. Just squeeze, squeeze. Don't do it. Yeah, when you do that and put your finger in, you nip all the skin up on your finger and you end up with blood blisters, so don't do that. Over the top and squeeze, nice and gently, until you've got your piece of wire folded in half. Grip the end with your round nose pliers and curve, curve. Don't go and touch. If you touch, this is your hook and you won't be able to hook it into anything if you touch. Just a nice little loop like that. Now then, take the loop and put it into your flat nose pliers. Let me show you a close up. Can you see how it's in there? And then you take the wires and bend one way and then the other. Just into a Y shape, not flat or anything. Looks a little bit like a coat hanger. Round nose pliers again, grip, turn, all the way in until it touches. Like that. And then do the other side. Sometimes you will find, depending on the size of your pliers, that the wires will overlap. Can you see how those two curls are overlapping? Go back into your pliers, that supports the hook, put your round nose in either loop and open them up. Just give them a bit of a flatten down because they're a bit skew-iffy. And that is your hook. So your little eye will go on like that. hook and eye. Brilliant. So now we need to attach that to the bracelet itself. So I'm going to separate the wires on the end, and I'm going to separate them just one at a time. One, and it really doesn't want to get hold of these today. Two. There we go. Even them up as you go. So you saw me even up the second one there. There we go. It's being really awkward. And 3. And make sure. What you're aiming for is 2 groups of 4 wires. What we don't want is just a big splay like your hand fingers spread out or anything like that, big bunch of bananas. We don't want that. We want 2 groups of 4 wires like that. Okay, nice and flat, nice and neat, and together. If these aren't together, it's going to be very, very difficult to do the next step. Okay, so grip right across. This is the top face, that's underneath. Grip across with your flat pliers and bend them upwards. Yeah. Now grip across the top edges with your round nose pliers, all 4 wires, and curl, curl, until they go underneath like a little hook, like that. Do exactly the same on the other side. Sorry, finish that one. You see how I tend to do one away and one towards me? I think that's something to do with being right-handed. I aren't sure, but I always end up doing it that way. And then do, so there's your 2 hooks in close-up. Put your eye on and then start easing the pliers over those wires so they come in. I'm not squashing them down flat, I am sort of easing that loop. I'm trying to get it in so that it shows you, and of course it won't, will it? Easing the pliers over it so it continues the circular shape that we made of the hook. This means that once we get it, come here, once we get it in, there will be no little sharp bits that stick into the wrist on the other side. This is fiddler, and it is something that you need to practice doing, but once you've got it done, it's actually much comfier than just squashing the wires down. There we go. I'm going to do exactly the same on the other side. So my little loop, oh well, if it goes on, there we go, on it goes, and then pliers. You see how I'm going for the edges of the cut wires, not higher up, and that eases them in and around. It also gives a little bit of movement to the clasp, because you still want it to have a little bit of give one way or the other. I do the other side. So put the pliers through and just push down, ease it round. Clip in, ease, and push down. There we go. So basically it's your strap. I don't have a fancy, well I do have a fancy mandrel, but I don't use it often. This is just a jam jar with beads in, and shaping it round gives you a nice gentle curve. That's lovely for the top of your wrist, but you need something a bit smaller when it comes to the side. So this is just a small piece of perspex that I use for putting rings on for photos, and I'm just curving the edges. So anything you've got kicking around, necks of bottles, lipstick tubes, anything like that, and just ease the bracelet until you've got it into a nice oval shape. I'm being quite gentle with it, I'm not, you know, forcing anything. Can you see we're almost there? Now to get that final bit, I put 2 fingers in either side, thumb on the top, and I just ease. Can you see how I'm just pushing the clasp in? Now then, you know what I said about that binding in the middle not being in the middle? Now it's obvious, and it won't slide. It shouldn't slide really. If you've done your bindings right, they shouldn't be sliding around anyway. Now when I put the bracelet on, it's not really that noticeable. That's the clasp at the back. but you know what, I'm going to show you how to fix it. So we're going to need, yeah, it's not going to move. Wishful thinking. Bring it back into shot, Rachel. I don't know. Okay, we're going to get some more binding wire. Altogether, I think I used probably about 12 inches of binding wire altogether. And I'm just going to join on where I left off before and add another binding there. Do make sure that you follow in the same way that you bound, so that when you cut off, everything's nice and neat and flat. So if you went round a certain way before, go around the same way now. So I just added another 2, but I think it needs another 1. Let's just add another 1 in there. That's looking better. Okay. I'll snip that off at the back less than halfway. Now do you remember when we snipped the other one off less than halfway? That's going to be great now, because what it means is when I lift that up and I snip that one less than halfway, it will just fit snug in with a tiny little gap, see? Make sure they're all nice and together. And I'm just going to, there we go, move that out of the way, and I'm going to get my cloth and just give that a little rub. Now it looks central. I hope you enjoyed that. It's a lovely plain bangle and it's a great one for make, and it's a good seller. Thanks for watching. Happy wrapping!